Okay, Mr. Clerk, when you're ready.
Damien? What's that?
When you're ready.
Apologies. All right, Devin Reese.
I am here, but thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. I'll gavel in the Thursday, October 12th, 2023 meeting and ask for a roll call.
All right, we'll try one more time. Devin Reese.
Here.
Clara Andriola.
Present.
Donald Abbott. Here. Jenny Breckus. Absent. Mike Clark.
Present.
Naomi Dewar. Oh, I see her on Zoom. Hold on one moment. I'm going to give her just a second here. Hold on one moment. Hey, Naomi, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah. Just calling roll call.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next, Jean Herman.
Here.
Ed Lawson. Here. Kathleen Taylor.
Here.
Paul Anderson for Diane Vanderwell. Here. And non-voting member Beth Smith.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much. I'll ask Mr. Anderson, who is visiting with us today, to lead us in the flag.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Mr. Clerk, item A3, approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Taylor, a second by Mr. Abbott. Any additional questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 4, approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion or any corrections that need to be made to the August 10th, 2023 meeting minutes?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Andriola,
Second.
a second by Ms. Taylor. Any additional questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries
Aye.
unanimously. Mr. Clerk.
We've received no public comment at this time.
Okay, I'll close item 5 and move to item 6, 6A.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Smith for the record. I would like to read a resolution of appreciation into the record for past Chair Ed Lawson. So this is resolution number 23-06, a resolution of appreciation for the services of Ed Lawson from 2022 to 2023, Chair of the Regional Planning Governing Board. Whereas Ed Lawson served as the Chair of the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Governing Board, RPGB, twice, once from August 2013 to August 2014, and again from August 2022 through August 23, providing thoughtful and focused leadership to the board, the Regional Planning Commission, and the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency. And whereas Ed Lawson is one of the longest serving members on the RPGB, having first joined the board in 2011. And whereas Ed Lawson presided over the official launch of the 2024 Regional Plan Update during his second tenure as chair of the Regional Planning Governing Board. And whereas Ed Lawson thoughtfully worked through various regional topics and studies conducted and underway by TMRPA, including the Natural Resources Plan, Public Infrastructure Plan, several versions of the Consensus Forecast, and Truckee Meadows annual reports. And whereas Ed Lawson participated in a major overhaul of the regional plan in 2019 and engaged with staff to develop a deeper understanding of new concepts such as regional land designations and facility and service standards. And whereas Ed Lawson participated on the RPGB Projects of Regional Significance Review Subcommittee to review the PRS guidelines and address the regional impacts of growth and changing conditions in the Truckee Meadows. And whereas Ed Lawson brought his inclination for efficiency and expediency in his capacity as chair and ran meetings quickly while ensuring completeness and attention to detail. And whereas Ed Lawson worked during his time as chair to increase fiscal sustainability of the organization, including employee retention. And whereas Ed Lawson participated on the RPGB Legislative Subcommittee during the 2023 session of the Nevada State Legislature to ensure the goals and policies of regional planning were represented. And whereas Ed Lawson consistently and effectively exercised his responsibilities as a member of the Regional Planning Governing Board calmly, fairly, and efficiently with strong leadership, clear direction, respect for staff, and a commitment to the benefits of regional planning. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Regional Planning Governing Board does hereby extend its sincere appreciation to Ed Lawson for serving as the chair of the Regional Planning Governing Board and for his countless hours of public service on behalf of all of the citizens of the Truckee Meadows. Thank you, sir.
Almost makes me sound good.
Well, I think it Let me bring it back to the body first here for any comments that would like to be made by my colleagues. Does anyone wish to be heard? Hearing no people, I'll take my shot at it. So I'll extend my gracious and thoughtful, heartfelt appreciation to Mayor Lawson for his time serving not only this body, but just regionally, knowing that the approach that you take is always focused on protecting the community, protecting the community's assets, but doing so in a way that is respectful of your colleagues across jurisdictions. And really, I've learned a lot from you and been mentored by you over the years. And I think your service will be something that'll be something you'll look back on, of course, on this body and think fondly of. And certainly each of us will have been made our lives better by it. So thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this item? Beth Smith. Thank you so much, Ms. Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair Reese. So I'd like to say thank you because I recently went through many months of chemo treatment while I also served on the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Governing Board. And I'm incredibly grateful to you for making sure that I always had the materials sent to the office, sent to my home, that I had the ability to call in. You checked on me. You made sure that I had everything that I needed so that I could continue my service while I was home and also recovering. And it's making actions like that that bring the inclusion of the school district and my service to this body, knowing that I could also care for my health while I served alongside you. And I want you to know that I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, let me ask Mr. Clerk if there are any public comment.
We've received none.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll bring it back to the body. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion
Second.
by Ms. Andriola, a second by Ms. Dewar. Any additional questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chair, Jeremy Smith for the record. Next up, we have item 6B. It's a public hearing item. It is our annual regional plan update item that we do, not the 5-year update, but the annual update. And we have Chris Tolley to take us through this minor changes.
Mr. Tolley, welcome.
Thank you. Chris Tolley, Team RPA. This item is an amendment to the regional plan for the annual updates as introduced by Director Smith. And that case number is RPA 23-004. The current version of the regional plan, 2019, was adopted on October 10th of 2019. And through each subsequent calendar year, staff has tracked the updates, corrections, and clarifications to the regional plan and then brought those forward for consideration by both the RPC and the RPGB. And those, for the most part, are corrections, clarifications, and updates. And for these, staff is recommending that the amendment does support the goals and policies of the regional plan. Little connection to NRS. The Nevada revised statutes do require that the Regional Planning Commission look at the plan annually for any potential updates. So this satisfies that. And then as noted, these are minor and they are related to policy and mapping, basically corrections, clarifications, and updates. And then here's the full list of them, and we can delve into these if needed, but the first 3 are part of the correction and clarification realm. The next 2 are mapping, corrections, and updates. And then the last one is the replacement of Appendix 2, the PRS guidelines in the current regional plan with the current version, which the Regional Planning Commission adopted at their August meeting. And then policy RC10 sets review criteria and sets a review criteria for consideration for each regional plan amendment. And staff identified no impacts to any of the listed criteria for said amendments to the regional plan. And on to the motion. So this is on page 12 of the packet and also up on the screen. This does conclude my presentation, however, available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tolley. Let me bring it back to the board and see if there are any questions by the board. Okay, and Mr. Clerk, what about public comment?
We have none for this item.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Or I move to sponsor the amendment request and adopt RPG B, Resolution 23-07 regarding minor policy and mapping amendments to the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan based on the findings listed in the staff report.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Andriola, a second by Ms. Taylor. Any additional questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chair, Jeremy Smith for the record. Next item, item 6C, is presentation, discussion, and possible direction to staff regarding the 2024 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan update, policies being considered. We're excited to get these policy ideas out in front of you a year ahead of the plan update. And we have Nate Kusha, our policy analyst, to take us through.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Nate Kusha for the record. As Dr. Smith mentioned, this is a presentation about the sort of new policies, policy refinements, and all of the work items contemplated ahead of and for the 2024 regional plan update. So as all of you are probably familiar with, the last regional plan update was adopted in 2019, and that was kind of a major overhaul of the plan itself. These any policy additions, as well as refinements for this one, are really sort of targeted and small things. So we're going to kind of go through what we have. So, as hopefully you're all aware too, we are working through our natural resources planning effort, and there are a variety of policy additions that we see coming out of this effort based on the information and the data we've gathered from that. The first one of these is our source water protection policy. So this is a proposed policy. Team RPA has been working with RCI and NDEP, a variety of other organizations, on their source water protection program, source water protection plan. So there are a lot of background work has gone into this already. We've also, things have come to light through the natural resource planning process. So the idea here is really to just have a policy that outlines that the jurisdiction master plans, as well as the affected entity facility plans, should recognize that source water protection plan, and that's at that washoecountycleanwater.org website. And then also to request comment from the appropriate entities during the development review process when a given development interacts with a source water protection area. And again, our kind of authority is with things that come through the regional planning process. So this will be for regional planning, or for cases that will come to regional for review, right? However, all of this data and information will be available, and there's a tool there for any of the jurisdictions should they want to use this for any of their other cases. But our policy will simply require it for cases coming to regional. Similarly, we have our regional trails policy. So this is very similar to the last one where we've done a lot of background work with the Truckee Meadows Trails group, and there is the Truckee Meadows Trails plan now, and that is actually being expanded to the trail plan report, action plan, and the conceptual trail network. And so again, we're just asking jurisdictions recognize that plan, utilize it, and then request comment for any projects within a to be determined distance of any existing planned, desired, or existing planned or desired trails, excuse me. And so that kind of distance of what that'll look like is still kind of being worked through, as well as all of these policies. We're working with our regional plan update working group, and as well as any of our stakeholders, the community, et cetera, on these. So these are all sort of draft policy proposals as they are, and they'll be refined before we adopt them into our new plan. Well, yeah, so very similar to the source water one, same sort of idea, acknowledge it, request comment, et cetera. Moving on. Through past projects and discussions, we've identified the need to really better coordinate with our tribal governments at a regional level, and really to consider the tribal perspective in the development review process. And so that's what this policy is really aiming to do. The spatial locations of cultural resources, they're not easy to come by. They haven't been shared. It's very sensitive information, obviously. So instead of kind of mapping all of these things, we've taken a different route of let's just talk to the tribes. Let's get their take on cases, and let's coordinate with them, make sure they're receiving the materials for developments so that they can then come to us when they notice something might be interacting with cultural resources, right? And these sort of parameters for when we send cases to them are being worked. They have voiced to us that they'd like to see any case that would come to us go to them. So we're obviously going to do that. So that's what they would like, but we've also recognized that maybe some of these cases are maybe more critical for them to give their feedback and comment on. So we're really working on the parameters or what it is to sort of flag that for them. And that'll work through the working group and et cetera again. All right, then this is the big one from the Natural Resource Policy Edition. So we're working on what we're calling the Natural Resource Considerations Areas at this moment. Nevada Revised Statutes 278.0274, Section 2 requires that we have a map that really outlines where it is best suited for development. So we've kind of taken a flip side of that and said, well, I think we can map where maybe it's not suited for development. In essence, it'll show where development is more appropriate, right? So we have our development constraints area, or the DCA, which you're all probably familiar with. That's a very hard line. If you're in a DCA, essentially no development. There's some exceptions, but that's sort of the idea. What we've, kind of noticed, right, what we want to point out is that even if you're outside of that area, there are still things to consider when it comes to natural resources, right? And so this is sort of more that gray area or what's outside that DCA that we still want to bring up, we still want to talk about and be aware of. That's what this policy is really aiming at. We will utilize a spatial check of the data layers that are going to participate in this NRCA, and we'll really be mapping this, and include a report of these spatial interactions during our initial review memo. So again, that's at the very beginning of the development review process before it goes to the jurisdictional review process and then up to us. So hopefully everybody will know what we're looking at when it comes to natural resources upfront, right? It'll also be available as a tool for local planners to utilize in any of their casework, as well as the general public if they want to see what are some natural resource considerations from the data layers, which I'll go over soon, on any given parcel. So the next few slides will really outline all of the data layers that we've kind of identified that will participate in this, and all of the layers that will participate will come from like verified organizations and be verifiable data that's maintained and updated. So we're not just throwing things out there that will become outdated and we're utilizing that in a policy in later work. So the first couple, we have slopes of 15 to 30%. So our DCA contains slopes of 30% or greater. However, there's still considerations for steep slopes under 30%. So that 15 to 30% data will participate in this NRCA, or we're suggesting it should rather. And that's really coming from LiDAR data from Washoe County. We're looking at putting in some wildfire risk and hazard data. There is the Wildland Urban Interface or fire risk map that Truckee Meadows Fire already used. I believe the other fire entities in the region also use this map. So we're going to add that into this layer and see if there are any other WUI considerations that we need to be considering to put into this policy. Then we have plants and animals. So we're looking at things like wildlife habitat and distribution. Right now, we're kind of working through, well, what species really matter, are we really concerned about that need to participate in this policy? We also have wildlife migration corridors, things like mule deer and the pronghorn. And then endangered and threatened species, the ones identified so far are sage grouse and then the various buckwheats in the region that are only really found here. You can see a picture of the steamboat buckwheat up there. Then we have our critical source water protection areas. Again, we have a separate policy for that, but that layer will participate as part of the natural resource considerations areas map as well as the regional trail network, the existing plan, and the conceptual network. And then floodplain information. So we have AE floodways and things of that nature in our DCA, but there are still flooding concerns outside of that. So we've noted the 100-year floodplain. We'll map that out as part of this, as well as the 1997 flood extent. And then finally, we have agricultural lands. We think this is something that we should just be aware of in our region. There's not a whole lot of that sort of left, and it's kind of, an important thing to be aware of. So we'll just select that from the parcel information, the things that are noted as agricultural land. And then we're looking at how to best identify maybe potential agricultural areas that maybe don't have that designation currently, but would be prime for agricultural uses, and sort of seeing if we can map that out as well. Finally, we have renewable energy areas. So these are really, we have a variety of layers of wind, geothermal, and solar potential areas. And so it's just noting that if there's a project going in and it's near that, it's something to consider. Maybe you can utilize those resources to some degree, as well as then proximity to kind of existing power generation facilities, as well as our regional utility corridors and sites, assuming that it would be easier to tap into those potentials if you're near those utility areas already. So that's kind of our natural resource consideration areas. As it stands now, we're working through all of these. We just had a meeting about this with our working group last week, I believe that was. And so we're working through all of these together. The final policy addition we're looking at is a broader regional coordination policy. So we've really acknowledged that the need to engage the broader region on a regular basis. And we've heard this a lot, right? That we need to kind of look at everything, not just what we have jurisdictional authority over, sort of Washoe County, but what else is around us, right? So this is really shaping up to be like maybe a once a year bringing together the different entities and agencies just for coordination and information sharing, right? So we're all kind of know what's going on with each other. You can see kind of the list we've identified so far to participate in this. It's the surrounding counties, the tribal entities, both in and around the county, the federal state agencies, and the economic development authorities. It's kind of what has been identified thus far. Again, these are all still draft and in works, so that list could expand, but that's where we're at thus far. We're looking at possibly stylizing this as like a one-day mini conference or something, because it's a lot of different groups to bring together. So, and we want to make sure we have sort of targeted topics of why we're all gathering, right? So people hopefully will show up and talk to us. So that's it for policy additions. Moving on from there, we're going to look at some policy refinements. So things we already have in the regional plan that we think maybe we can tweak a little bit, make a little bit better. So the first of these are really coming out of our public infrastructure planning process, right? And the first one really being possible changes to the tier boundaries based on the discussion with jurisdictions to reflect the infrastructure planning we have going on. And that'll really come to light, I think, if we go down this. We don't know if any of these boundaries will change, obviously, but as we get farther into the public infrastructure plan process, we can see maybe we need to adjust some of the tier boundaries based on where there's availability of infrastructure and services. Then beyond that, we have a potential Tier 3 overlay that we're looking at, and this is really to accommodate low density housing. So over the past few years, we've had multiple requests to do like small increases to density in Tier 3 areas bordering Tier 2 and development. So we've noticed that many of these are in line with the adjacent developments they border and do have the facilities and services available to serve them and are really at the edges of maybe like the TMSA or back up against federal Forest Service lands, things like that. And they really end sort of the development potential in that area. So we're looking at, we have low density development in Tier 2. We have an area of Tier 3, maybe a small pocket, and it's surrounded by already developed low density areas and or those federal lands or butt up against the edge of the TMSA, things like that. And we're saying, okay, well, this makes sense for lower density development. We don't want high density. We don't want high rises in these suburban type areas. And it's not going to sprawl out anymore because you're kind of at the end there, right? We've noticed many cases come in like this, and we just don't want to really burden, I guess, the governing board with it. Currently, they require a regional plan amendment to change the tier, to change the land use to go up, even if they're going from maybe a development potential of 1 housing unit per 40 acres and they want to build, say, 5. It still requires a whole regional plan amendment process. So what we're really looking to do is not remove the governing board authority over these areas, really just bundling them into one decision at the time of our update next year, instead of burdening you guys with many minor sort of decisions. Other policy refinements are our natural resources policy about and our natural resource plan creation. We'll be changing that to the management and maintenance thereof. Same thing with the public infrastructure plan. Those will both be done by the time the update is. So those will move into a management and maintenance rather than creation of. And then finally, our freestanding communities policy currently requires a regional plan amendment to amend the boundaries of those communities. However, those boundaries are managed by Washoe County right now. Washoe County is the only one that has freestanding communities. And so they really do not need a regional plan amendment to amend them. It's just a master plan amendment for the county, which would then just come for a conformance review to the regional planning agency. So with that, moving on to work items. These are not necessarily policy things, but things we want to get done before the update. First of those is to recalculate the regional plan statistics on growth. So as probably many of you, or if not all, remember, we did 4 different scenarios that we looked at with a variety of data for our last update. We're simply going to take how we've grown over the last 5 years and the data there, compare it to those scenarios and to see how we're performing, right? And compare, are we looking more like an infill one? Where do we lie in that sort of scenario spectrum, right? Additionally, we're working with the City of Reno to adjust the City of Reno sphere of influence boundaries. We did a similar process with the City of Sparks during the last regional plan update, where we looked at areas that maybe the city isn't looking to annex, they don't want in their sphere anymore, simply remove those from the map, so we're not doing another regional plan amendment down the line, just at the time of the update. And then finally, we're looking to update our development constraints layer. We have some maybe sort of outdated data that goes into that right now. We're looking just to update it. We have more refined slope data. So going to add that in, get a better look at what our 30% and over slopes are, as well as the AE floodway update is in process. It's about a year out. So when that happens, we'll also put the new AE floodway information into our development constraints area as well. So with that, our regional plan update is coming in October 2024. We are still hitting that deadline, and I feel like we're on track for that. But other than that, if any questions, I'm available.
Okay, Mr. Kusha, thank you so much for the excellent presentation. It's obviously a voluminous amount of information to process. I'm not sure how many questions we'll have today, but I thank you for the presentation. Let me turn it over to my colleagues and see what questions might arise.
And Chair Reese, just so you know, Naomi Dewar has her hand raised on Zoom.
No problem. Ms. Dewar, 1 second, please, and I'll come to you. Looks like I'm there to you. Ms. Dewar, welcome. If you're muted, unmute yourself.
It looks like she was out of the meeting for a minute,
Okay.
but she joined via 2 means, so perhaps one is for voice and one for face.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We've got you. Welcome.
Okay, sorry, the audio disconnected, so I had to reconnect. So it might happen again, so be on the lookout, team. First of all, I just wanted to say that was an amazing presentation. How thorough, I mean, you're so in connection with the material. It was so well done. And some of the things that stood out to me are there were many things, frankly, and as Mr. Reese said, I mean, that was very comprehensive. I kept wondering if we could stop for a moment, get our breath, and ask a question, but we're here. So I just wanted to say I was so pleased to see the discussion on the natural resource plan and how you would actually integrate that into the regional plan. I just thought that was excellent. You've been working on it as a team for 2 years, and now here it is, and you're ready to incorporate it. And I think that will so enhance the review process for you and also for us to do a better job. So thank you. I mean, it's never been done. This is a brand new thing. You also mentioned several other enhancements to this process, and I'm not going to go over them all, but I think all the things you mentioned, but most particularly probably this annual regional, let's call it summit, planning summit, I think is a really brilliant idea. And I really think that it will enhance this coordination that you're speaking of and get everyone on the same page. So I just really wanted to recommend that you do follow through with that idea. And then lastly, I wanted to ask a question. Back when you were talking about the trails plan, which was towards the beginning, excuse me, you mentioned the trail plan that was adopted, but I know that I'm working with the Parks Foundation and your agency, as well as a couple others, to develop a brand new Virginia Range Trail corridor, which will have a number of trail plans, so to speak, or trailways. I'm not sure what to call them at this point, but I just wondered when or if that would get incorporated into this planning process. In other words, does it have to be all the way done? Does it have to be approved by somebody? What's the process?
This is Jeremy Smith for the record. Councilman Madura, that's a great question. And basically the trail that we've been working on together, the East Side Trail, along with other conceptual trail ideas, are currently being compiled by Jay Howard, the Regional Trails Coordinator at the Truckee Mills Parks Foundation. He's working on an action plan and that conceptual network. And we already have that final report that exists. So once all of that is done, I anticipate it's about a month or two out from him being ready to kind of take that around to the jurisdictions and other entity boards and, I think look for acceptance or possibly adoption of that plan. And that should happen over the year. So I think in advance of the update.
Okay, so that's a great answer. I mean, what you're basically telling me is the work we're doing, which involves Washoe County staff, as I said, the Parks Foundation, your staff, and others, that work can get included into the plan as a conceptual part of the framework. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, that's a great answer. All right. Well, keep on. I really appreciated this update. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any comments at this time? Okay, I'll come back to the clerk. Any public comment?
We have none for this item.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the board and seek a motion. Is it to accept the report?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Dewar,
Second.
a second by Ms. Taylor. Any additional questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chair, Jeremy Smith for the record. Next, we have item 6D. It's an informational presentation, discussion of possible actions to staff regarding fiscal year 24-25. That is a mistake with the title that I made, although I will cover components of 23-24 as well. Next slide, please. So just a little background quickly. Funding for the agency is outlined in Nevada state law and implemented through an interlocal agreement among the jurisdictions. And basically the current funding levels by jurisdiction are there above. It's 40% from the city of Reno owing to the additional member that sits on this board from the city of Reno, and then 30% from both city of Sparks and Washoe County. We also augment our budget with 2 shared work programs, one with the Regional Transportation Commission, which we've been doing that for about over a decade now, I feel. And it varies. Certain years we'll get $75,000. Typical years is a $60,000 annual input, basically. And then with the Western Regional Water Commission, we have now a shared work program with up to $50,000 that we can bill for services rendered. And that includes things like minutes transcription for the WRWC and NWPC meetings, as well as GIS, graphics, website, technical type support for the Western Regional Water Commission staff. Finally, then we have alternative funding sources. For example, the work we did, we had a contract with the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection to look at that source water protection information. That's wrapped up now, and we've got the info. But from time to time, we engage in some of these contracts for on the order of $10,000 to $15,000 contracts, mostly to provide GIS service. Thank you. Next, please. Okay, so taking a look at the previous fiscal year, not the one we're in, but the one that's finished out. These are the pre-audit values. The audit will be coming in December. We have a new auditor that we engaged for a little bit of cost savings. And so we're still working through that, but that'll be coming forward. And they also prepare our financial statements. And so that's why you'll see my use of circa or roughly in these numbers right now, because we want to make sure that they're based off those adopted financial statements. But we do a great job of tracking with our bookkeeper, Zyla Boyd. And so feel confident. At any rate, we got in roughly $918,000, and we spent about $935,000. So about $17,000 we dipped into the agency fund balance, but that was an expected dip into the support. And if we can go to the next slide, especially for folks that are new on the board, I want to explain kind of how our fund balance has been operating since the 2019 regional plan update. Basically, during the years 2017, 2018, and 2019, the previous director negotiated with the jurisdictions for a little extra input of monies to support that update process. And so those monies came through each of those 3 years, and we used quite a bit of it to hire consultants that helped us with the regional plan update. But in the end, we didn't use all of it. About $125,000 or so remained. And so we, in discussions with the board, decided that we should use that money for the implementation of the plan, and specifically those 2 big initiatives we discussed, the Natural Resource Plan and the Public Infrastructure Plan. And so we have been utilizing that money over time, hiring consultants for the NR plan. They were called Cardno, then Stantec bought them. And now we've hired Catherine Hansford Hansford Economic Consulting, to help us with the public infrastructure plan. So that 67,000, give or take, in the green is really an expected expense that we're dipping into the fund balance to achieve, and we will really be happy to utilize those monies and then get back to straight budgeting and not having that in there. But we need to be sure to maintain a healthy agency fund balance to ensure that we're ready to, pay out for vacation or sick time for employees, unexpected costs due to, rising inflation or litigation or whatever might come up. And so it's obviously very important to have that. But we are going to be whittling away at the green, and we anticipate they will have that spent with our 2 consultants through the rest of this fiscal year, and if not, very early in the forthcoming fiscal year. Next, please. So in terms of the current fiscal year, we are on track to come in either at or slightly under budget based on our first quarter budget versus actual. And again, no use of the agency fund balance other than what I just described in terms of using those remaining monies that were there. And just wanted to say that thank you very much for the negotiations last year. It has enabled us to hire an administrative assistant. We can welcome Carla Purse to our team. She's sitting over there. Thanks for joining us, Carla. So that's fantastic. So we're looking really good for this year's budget. Next, please. And then looking at next year's, some assumptions for next year. One of the things that we came up against was we wanted to make sure that we were considering small increases to the budget every year so that we don't get in a situation where we need to ask for a large chunk like we did the last time. Now, that was pretty important to hire Carla and to make sure that we were sustainable as an agency. And so we just want to make sure we're keeping up with inflation. I'm sort of waiting on the final audit results to claim, exactly what might be necessary, but it's on the order of 1.5% or less. I think we could actually get by with 0. But again, we want to make sure that we're keeping up with the rising costs of everything going up. So I will be able to bring back in December once we have those numbers in, and after I have some conversations with the city and county managers in advance of our meeting on December 14th, I'll bring this back and we can talk about exactly what we anticipate as an increase. And just as a heads up, a 1% increase would be about $4,000 to the city of Reno and $3,000 to each Washoe County and Sparks. So not a huge chunk of money to bump it up. We're looking for continuing our merit-based salary increases for staff. I'm going to take a look between now and December at any potential for cost of living adjustments. We did a small COLA last year, but we may want to be able to build in another one for this year to, again, keep up with inflation. We're going to continue to use interns, and for GIS and admin support, which has been really successful for us, we're participating again in the PAC internship program at the University of Nevada, so that's been a great program. And costs for things, we're trying to save on the audit, we're trying to save on bookkeeping and our lobbyists, but prices do seem to be going up, so we just want to be aware of that. And finally, I just wanted to point out that, I know we have some items coming up to talk about me. I've had I think it's been a very excellent progression of the director salary position. And for myself, I am not seeking any increase to that compensation for the upcoming fiscal year. Next slide, please. And so with that, I have a proposed motion. It's just to move that we begin to work on the budget and bring it back in December. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Smith, thank you so much. I'll turn it over to the board for any questions that they might have at this time. Ms. Taylor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Smith, why would you not include a increase in your pay? It's very admirable, but you deserve to be paid for a job well done, I would imagine.
Thank you. I think it's a good question. I did build in a 1.5% increase into this year's budget to account for it as a potential. I think my concern is that I don't want the gap between the staff salaries and the director salary to continue to widen, and I'd like to see it narrow a bit. And that's kind of where I'm leaning in that regard.
Okay, but it's not something, if we make this recommendation, approve it today, that's set in stone?
It is not. No, that'll be part of the negotiation of the contract. And
So you might not have a say.
that's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Wise commentary, of course. Any other questions from my colleagues here at the dais? Trustee Smith. President
Thank you.
Smith.
As a non-voting member, I do not get a vote with this, but I will let you know, Director Smith, that I think it is important to model for your team being compensated for your professional value. And I personally think that you are due this and you have more than earned it. Again, I do not have a vote, but I do want to add that voice that representing being paid for the value you bring to your profession is something that we should all have. And so that's just the thought that I'll offer.
Thank you, President Smith. Obviously, with your extreme background and depth of knowledge in the HR field, I appreciate your commentary very much. Any other questions at this time from the body? Okay, I'll go to you, Mr. Clerk. Any public comment?
We have none for this item.
Okay, we'll close public comment and come back to the board. I see a motion on the board.
Well, I'll make a motion.
Okay, we've got a motion by Ms. Dewar and a second by Ms. Andriola. Any other questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And just to be clear, that was a motion to begin developing the budget based on the budget principles that Dr. Smith presented.
Yes,
Okay.
that was understood.
Okay.
Okay, item E, I think is next up on the agenda. Is this, Ms. Prunty, your purview?
Yes, Mr. Taylor, Jessica Prunty for the record, thank you. The item before you is Director Smith's annual performance evaluation. I provided a memorandum to all members of the board earlier this week, which compiled the results that were received as of that time from 8 of the 10 RPGB members. And then earlier today, I did receive the results of the evaluation from Councilwoman Breckus. I have provided that to you as well, but I did not have an opportunity to fold it into the compilation in the memo. This is for your informational purposes. There's the ratings average from the prior year and the ratings from this year over the term of this contract, as well as the commentary that was offered by any of the RPGB members. We're looking for an acceptance of the evaluation results as far as your action item, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Prunty. I'll come to the board for questions or comments. Okay, for my part, I'll offer the following observations. Number one, I was certainly not surprised to see quite high ratings, and in fact, seeing them go up year over year. There were a number of comments that were included by various board members, several of which gave me a smile and are all very excellent. But I wanted to highlight just a couple of them. Under the judgment and decision making, I found it a consistent theme throughout all the evaluations that Mr. Smith, Dr. Smith, that you have a way of distilling complex information and making it approachable for each of us. And I think this is an important concept. Obviously, each of us on this body has different backgrounds in terms of what we bring to elected life and then service on this board. And you've got a range of folks who have varying degrees of skill in very specific areas. Trustee Smith, President Smith, of course, has a depth of background in human resources. My colleague on the phone, Councilmember Dewar, really has a depth of research in a more hard science background. Ms. Taylor, of course, has a background in public engagement process and planning. And so just a wide variety of people that you have to interact with, and none more important than the others. But all of us feel, I think, very much empowered by the information that you share. And I think that is a skill set that I personally very highly value, and it looks like consistently throughout the evaluation process, this is something that you've done a very good job of. The second thing I wanted to talk about was really the development of personnel. And I think a good example of this is the folks who make presentations before us. And I'll sort of think about Mr. Tolley and Mr. Kushna initially, only in as much as I value very highly their presentations. And I think that making sure that your team is empowered in their own professional development is evident, because not everyone is, a gifted or adept adept public speaker, and coming in front of anybody can be complicated. So it appears to me that you are developing the talent within your organization and allowing those people also to shine. So those are two of the areas where I was really encouraged to see excellent work. And then the last thing I'll say and come back to the body is it is clear from all of your comments that there's a high degree of leadership being exhibited by you on this board and within our region. I think that people have come to respect your even-keeled nature, that your efforts are in service of all of this community, and you don't trend towards the political. I think you are very good about staying in the lane of a regional planner. So for my part, I thank you for the service that you've given, and I'm looking forward to the years ahead. Any additional questions or comments from the body at this time? Okay, hearing none, I'll come back to, I take it, Mr. Clerk, we did not have public comment on this item, so I'll confirm that, and then come back. It looks like we're looking for a motion. Can I get a motion along Ms. Prunty's directed lines? Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Andriola, a second by Mr. Abbott. Any additional questions at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item F, is that also you, Ms. Prunty?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Jessica Prunty for the record again. In your packet at page 31 is a memorandum from me to the members of the board. It is a very brief memo on the director contract and compensation item. Director Smith's contract runs on a calendar year basis, January 1 through December 31st. And I have attached a copy of his contract from last year. And the past practice of this body has been to vote now on whether or not to renew his contract and then delegate the negotiation of the terms of the contract, including compensation, to the chair and potentially the vice chair, whatever the pleasure of the body is. And then historically, I have been part of those meetings with Director Smith and the chair and the vice chair to work out the terms and any other changes in the contract that are recommended. That's brought back to this body in December for ratification and consideration of those terms. So what we would be looking for today is a motion to renew and delegate that authority, and of course, any conversation and discussion you might have on the item.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Prunty. I'll come back to the board for questions or comments. Mr. Lawson?
Make a motion to renew the contract and have the chair and vice chair negotiate the terms.
Okay, I have a motion.
A second.
And a second by Ms. Dewar. I think both of you have been in that position before in the past, so I thank you for the motion. Yeah. Let me, before we call for the question or have any question or comments on the motion, let me confirm that there's no public comment on this item.
You are correct. There is none.
Thank you so much. Now I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're on to our report section of the meeting, and I'll turn it over now to Board President, Washoe County Board of Trustees member Beth Smith.
Thank you so much, Chair Reese. So first, I'm going to share a story about Councilwoman Dewar and I. So we recently opened the new Jaywood Raw Elementary School, and many of you know that the opening of that school really signified a change in the way that the school district really looks to work with its city and county partners. So as part of that project, we invested heavily in pedestrian safety, traffic, and then we opened the school. And then we saw what really happens when a school day begins and people are driving through that area. One of the things that we noticed is that we installed different types of pedestrian walkways for those school zones. And we noticed that community members were not responding as well to one of the styles of it. So Councilwoman Dewar and I actually went out and did crossing guard duty and recognized what we were seeing with the community as we trained them up on those school zones. And we also recognized as a school district that we needed to upgrade the second pedestrian walking zone. So I'd like to personally thank our Chief Operating Officer, Adam Searcy, who immediately made that order. And now we are also investing in that second, more upgraded student pedestrian walking area. And as a side note to our community, I will ask that you not drive through a crosswalk while children are in it, which Councilwoman Dewar and I actually saw happen while we were also in the crossing walk. So just as a fun reminder to everyone.
We're thinking we may need new legislation to make sure that the police have the authority to enforce that. In other words, the current law says if you have your foot in the crosswalk, cars have to stop. But a lot of kids are not going to put their foot in the crosswalk until the cars stop. So it becomes a game of chicken and egg. And at least this has been brought to us by the Reno Police and the school police. So it's something we may need to work on going forward. But thank you, Beth. You were utterly amazing in getting these enhanced crosswalks put in with Mr. Searcy, encouraging him to do so. And I just wanted to mention before you left the topic that we've also provided from the city of Reno, in this case, flags for the children to use to walk across. I know we've done this previously in Reno. I know they've done it previously in Sparks, and it seems to be effective for a while. They do disappear after a while. They have now asked, they've said they're so effective that they've asked for a second set. I also bought vests for all the parents and to keep at the school, crossing vests. So, it takes a village, and we're all working together to make sure that our students in particular are safe. And I have to thank you for your leadership on this, President Smith. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman Dora. I appreciate it. And again, it's something that the school district is very happy to do and is grateful for the partnership with the city of Reno. Also wanted to share with the body that our board recently voted to rezone several elementary schools in the Spanish Springs area. There was an item for us to consider with building the new Stonegate Elementary School. We're not going to be proceeding at this time, but we still do treat that project as a when and not if, and that is part of our master plan as well. We also would like to say thank you to the TMRPA for the One Region event that was held on September 30th. You invited the school district to come, and we were able to engage with many community members on our facilities modernization plan, which, as a reminder to everyone, is going to be our 10-year roadmap for the project that we'll be doing, investing those WC1 dollars. Over the past 6 weeks, we've held more than 14 public regional meetings, along with many other small engagements, like that one event that we had. And just wanted to remind everyone that we appreciate everyone's voices in this, because this is really going to become the path forward for all the capital improvement that we do at the school district. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Smith, thank you so much.
Mr. Chair, Jeremy Smith, I have a brief report. Thank you, Trustee Smith, for mentioning the One Region event. We thought that was a great success on September 30th. And Clara, thank you for attending. We had good attendance. We had a bluegrass band, and it didn't rain, so it was very good. Last night, I did a presentation along with City of Reno and City of Sparks staffs to the American Institute of Architects Northern Nevada chapter. So that was a really interesting group to engage with, and I think that it's a great opportunity to get more feedback from a piece of the development community. Speaking of presentations, next week on Monday, Chris Tolley and I will be doing a presentation on our public infrastructure plan at the American Planning Association's Nevada chapter conference up at Lake Tahoe. And also in the afternoon, I'll be talking about natural resources with a group including folks from the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency and the Southern Nevada RTC, talking about trails. And Jay Howard from the Parks Foundation will also be there. So if you're going to the APA, check us out on Monday. And then finally, just wanted to make a note about the Projects of Regional Significance guidelines. We have, in working with the RPC, kind of slowed that process down a bit. We want to make sure that we can focus on our regional plan update and finishing our 2 initiatives. And also just want to do a little more research and make sure we're grounded in a clear understanding of the Nevada Public Charter School Authority process for charter schools, the Washoe County School District process for charter school approval, and also the approval processes at the local jurisdictions for private schools. And we want any PRS guideline that is suggested by the RPC to be grounded in a clear and significant effect to regional forum, public utilities and services, or natural resources. So that's the kind of research that we want to make sure that we have in hand. With that, our next meeting will be here in this room on December 14th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Smith. Is it accurate that the members also might report in this section? Okay, so let me just ask if any of the members have any comments or concerns. Okay, seeing none, I'll come back to you, Ms. Prunty, for item C, the legal counsel report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jessica Prunty for the record. Nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as with all the C items, there was no public comment on any of the C items, or the 7 items, 7A, B, and C. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we'll come back to number 8, board comments, requests for future agenda items. Anyone have anything there? Okay, I'll close that item and come now to our closing public comment.
We still have none.
Okay. And how about written correspondence?
There is none.
Okay, thank you so much. We're adjourned.